Yo, what's up? Steven here. I'm going to show you how I consistently close above 50% of my sales calls in this diagram. This is what I use, the exact process that it takes to get me to the close rate that I have right now. I believe we're sitting at around 60%. I'll throw up a screenshot so you guys can see my Monday.com CRM closing rates. And if you stay to the end, I'll show you the 2 secrets that make this work as well as it does. But either way, this flowchart is going to show you the exact process from the moment we get an engaged lead to the moment that we close them as a customer. What happens then? You can see here some of the questions that I ask. I'm going to go over everything, show you it so that you can take this and apply it into your own business. The way that this information should be consumed by you watching this video right now, you should take this. I'll leave a link to this in the description actually, so that you guys can just take this diagram and implement it into your business and do exactly what you need to do to modify this as you know, where you need, because everything's not going to be perfect. This is mainly general, so I'm going to go over the nuances. So kind of you could take this diagram and just use it, but let's get right into it. So what we have here is the flow chart, like I said, from start to finish when they get engaged. So the first step here, they get engaged, they book a call. So what does engaged mean? In the context of an entire funnel where you have people at the top of your funnel, like your TAM, where they're just leads who might know about your business, to being engaged leads where they've actually expressed interest in your business. So that could be booking a quote with you, scheduling a sales call, reaching out to you, being like, hey, what do you guys do? I'm kind of interested, right? At this point, they are an engaged lead. What do you do next? We call them to qualify. So this is just a quick like 10-15 minute call where you talk to the prospect, you ask them questions about their business, and you see if they're actually qualified. That's really the question here is, are they qualified? Excuse me. Or are they not qualified? These are the questions that we're asking. And I say here in this list, the information that we need to gather rather than questions to ask, because this is more of a framework. I don't follow a script when I'm on sales calls or even cold calls or qualifying calls, like these 10-15 minute just quick phone calls, because it's better to have a framework. In my experience, I won't say it's better, I'll just say it's worked better for me to have a framework rather than a script to follow, because the conversation typically flows a lot better when I'm using a framework like this for information that I need rather than specific questions to ask. If you're just starting out, what you can do is take these 1 through 6 or however many, 6, and turn them into questions so that you can have something to reference. But overall, this is more of a framework to follow rather than specific questions. So asking, first of all, why did they book a call? Right? It's very blunt. It's direct. Why are we here? Right? Why did you book a call in my calendar? Why are you reaching out? Why are you interested? Okay. Why did you book a quote? What trade you're in? So this is, for us, is our niche is home service businesses. That's who we serve. And so I'm looking to ask what kind of trade they're in, because that's going to make a big difference to, depending on what trade they're in, how the conversation is going to go. Because I'll have a lot more context on their business model, how it runs, the type of customers that they service. But either way, what trade are you in? That could be asking, you know, what niche are you in? How long they've been in business. This gives me an idea of, you know, are they super new? Is this business new? Have they been in the business for 30 years and they just started this one? Or have they not been in the business for that long, right? Maybe they just started this business and are just starting to serve this niche. Their yearly revenue, again, that's going to show how qualified they are, how they heard about us, what channel they came in. That's going to tell me what they know about us. Was this word of mouth and referral? Was this a cold call? Was this a cold email? Either way, I want to know how they heard about us so I know what information to send them. And then finally, if all this checks out, if they're qualified based on your customer standards, then confirm information about the call, date, time, make sure that they're good to go for that call. Tell them that, in our case, we tell them that we're going to be sending you more information before a call. Make sure you check those emails, watch the videos, because it's going to give you context on that call about our business so that we don't have to explain what we do, and we can spend most of the time talking about you, your goals, and your business. If that makes sense. So that's the qualifying call. If they're not qualified, what we do is put them in a re-engagement process. So they could be not qualified for a number of reasons. Maybe they're not doing enough yearly revenue to actually afford our services. Maybe their interest or the timing isn't perfect and they just wanted to learn more. It could be a number of things, but either way, we want to put them in a re-engagement process. And this has worked really well for us, and I'm sure it would for some of you out there watching this video, to send them information every couple of months, every couple of weeks, maybe, to follow up with them with a phone call or an email every few months to see how they're doing. Because when they are qualified, we want to put them back in this process right here. Okay. Qualified. So if we've done this call, they're qualified, everything checks out, everything looks good, confirm the appointment, like it said, and then we do the sales call. So if they show up, right, this is kind of assuming that they show up, and I could have put an extra section or part or step here showing what we do if they don't show up. But if they don't show up, then we call them to confirm like what happened, right? And then if everything is okay, then we just reschedule that call for another time. If they ghost us, then we just put them back into that re-engagement process. But if we go through that, so this is the sales call right here. What we're doing on the sales call is asking these questions or getting this information from them. So it follows a similar structure to that initial call, but it's just more of a in-depth conversation. The answers are typically longer, and we have more chance or more opportunity to actually talk about these things. So we're asking, why are we here? Reiterating, right? What process of events had to take place in order for this call to be booked, right? And for us, think about what it is for your customers right now. Why do they book a call with you? Okay, is it to get a quote on a new heat pump? But for us, it's to get more leads and help them grow their business, increase revenue, all that good stuff. What had to happen in order for them to be on this call with us right now? What process of events had to take place in their lives, in their business, for their lead generation to slow down, right? And then we can go into what their problems are, right? Why is this happening? Have they tried solving this before? We want to know what they've tried in the past to get context, and then ask them why didn't it work, right? A lot of times, like 100% of the time actually, I know why it didn't work. We know why the previous thing didn't work, and it can be for a number of reasons. However, we want to get them to tell us why it didn't work so that they can verbalize it. This whole process is more about them selling themselves on our services rather than us trying to convince them, right? Because you can sit there and talk about your services, how great they are, the features, blah, 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 until they're blue in the face. But unless they can convince themselves that they need you, then the conversation is not going to go anywhere, right? So that's my job, is to get them to talk themselves into it, essentially by going through these pain points of, what have you tried in the past? What are these problems? Why didn't it work? I want you to tell me why it didn't work. And then what we do is flip the switch. We say, okay, what would happen if we solve those problems for you, right? What would happen to your business? Would it grow? What effect would that happen, or what effect would that have on your life, etc., right? And so this is kind of getting into more of the emotional selling of aspect of the sales call, where we're getting them to kind of future pace this out and see what would happen if we solve this problem for them. What could their life look like? And we don't get into this too much because in a B2B setting, the sales calls typically flow more logically, the questions that we ask, and because this needs to work more on the logical side, not just on the emotional side, right? Like this is a transaction between two businesses where we're saying, this is what we're going to do for you. Typically, these are the results that our customers have. Is this actually going to work for you? Are you going to get an ROI? Most of it's logical. This is kind of the only part here that is more the emotional stuff. But lastly, what would happen if we didn't solve this? So we're doing it's the exact same question, but flipped. So you future pace it out in the good way. What happens if you go down this road where you actually solve the problem? And then we do the inverse. So what would happen if we don't solve this? And then again, you get them to tell you what would happen, right? You show them a shiny object in the future of what actually happens when this problem is solved, and you take them back into reality and say, okay, we're actually in a situation where you're not solving this. So what would happen if you stayed the same? Could you live with that, right? And in sales, it's called a tie down, where you essentially get someone to confirm something and tie it down, where they say they confess it verbally. So for example, if I were to ask a potential customer, what would happen if we didn't help you get more leads coming in through your website right now? I'd say, oh, it would be terrible. We would have to stay where we are right now. I don't think we'd be able to support our team as much. We wouldn't be able to grow and hit the benchmarks in our business, which would suck because I'm accountable to a bunch of people outside of my business in networks. There's a plethora of things, right? If they say this, then I would say back to them, so what you're saying is that if we don't get you more leads and more jobs booked coming in through your website, you wouldn't be able to hit the benchmarks. You wouldn't be able to support your team. You wouldn't be able to grow your team, and it would overall just suck, right? And then you get them to confirm that. You tie it down. Say yes. Get them to say yes, right? Because as much as possible, we need to get people to verbalize their issues and verbalize that they've said this thing, because we can potentially use that information later when they have objections for us. And then finally, what we do, so what are we going to do about it, right? That's the last kind of question that you're going to ask, right? You're not going to say, what are we going to do about this? You don't want to say that. However, this is where you get into the offer. So once all this information checks out and they are qualified, okay, that's not what I want here. Let me zoom out. Okay, zoom back in. Here we go. Finally, if they're qualified, then we present them the offer, right? And then if they accept, boom, pass to customer success, close them, send the invoice, boom, they're a customer now. And then we begin onboarding. But it's not always that simple. That is like 1% of the time. Most of the time, what happens is they have objections. If they reject the offer with an objection that's more direct, like, no, it's not the right time. I don't think so. Not right now. And you kind of get into their objections that they have, and they say no directly, like just flat out, no, I'm not doing this. Then you put them in a re-engagement process. You don't it's going to be a waste of time to try to go any deeper if they're clearly not into it. At this point, they should be, because they've gone over all their problems. And so if you get to this point and they pass this to the point that they're actually qualified and they're a good customer and they'd be a good fit for your program, then you shouldn't have this too much. I have almost never had someone say no, just flat out, because they didn't like what we're selling. They didn't like us. They didn't trust us, because at this point they have all that information. They have the trust in us. So now it's more about handling the objections that they have, right? So if we do handle the objections, which is usually like price, right? So the price is too high. That's 90% of the objections, I would say. And the other 10% include like us. They're not too, maybe it's timing. They don't know if this is the proper solution for them. There's a few more in there, but most of all, it's price. And so if we continue to go through these questions and kind of peel back the onion of what their objections, concerns are, and at the end, this can go on for 30 minutes, really, if you let it go on and if there's a ton of questions. But at some point, by like the 10, 15 minute point, I would say actually like it goes on for a little bit longer. Like at the 20-minute point, I can see that this is really not going anywhere. And so if keep in mind, they're qualified, they'd be a great fit for your program, whatever you're selling, I just schedule a second call with them. And typically on that second call, it will close. And again, for all these calls, like if they don't show up, then we call them. If it was just something that came up, then we reschedule the call. If not, if they ghost us, then we just re-engage them again. And then if that call closes, we pass them on to customer success. And then again, they're a customer now, begin the onboarding. And if not, then we do the re-engagement process. But overall, what's happening here, as you can see, is if they don't close with you, if you don't close a customer, they get put in the re-engagement process, right? And you want to optimize each of these points as much as possible. Like this is a funnel in and of itself where somebody is engaged, they are interested in buying your thing, they have expressed some interest, to them closing as a customer. And you can see how many steps there are in between here. But you can drill even further and get into the steps between them being engaged and them calling to qualify, or you calling to qualify, right? There's steps in between there, like sending them an email, getting their phone number, calling them. And then from there, the steps that come in between here of you getting the information. And then from there, sending them more information about yourself. But the big idea here that has helped me close more deals and consistently stay above a 50% close rate, which I believe the industry standard is like 20-25%. So double the industry standard, almost triple right now, actually, is creating content and creating a brand. Because the more content that you create on YouTube, on social media, YouTube's probably the best platform, at least for me, the more that you can create and increase your brand perception and the reach of your brand. I know brand is a buzzword. I used to think like people would talk about brand, it's just some wishy-washy thing. You can't really define what a brand is, but the brand is really who you are as a company. It's a reflection of yourself as a person if you're the owner of the company. For example, if you're walking down a store with some of your friends and you see in a shoe store or a clothing store like a crazy article of clothing or crazy shoe, you might be like, oh, that's so Sarah, or something like that, where you relate it to one of your friends who might wear that thing. It's because it fits with their brand, right? Their personal brand. But for you as a company, that personal brand is just the brand of your company, right? It's really a lot of the non-tangible things that you associate with somebody's company. And so having people that come from your content, or at least get shown all of your content or as much as possible before they hop on a call with you, the more they're going to want to work with you and associate with your brand. It's the exact same reason, like Alex Hormozi talks about, you can slap a Louis Vuitton brand on a Walmart t-shirt and sell it for 10, 20, 300 times the amount that you can buy it at Walmart, right? The second thing that makes this truly work is your offer. If you don't have an offer that people would feel stupid saying no to, then all of this essentially means nothing. You can have the best offer, the best branding in the world, and if you don't have a process like this, then you'll still do fine. But what this process does is it just elevates those two things even more, right? Our offer, I believe right now we'll get you 50K in revenue in 90 days, or you get a refund. That's a great offer. And so whatever the offer is for your business, whatever your brand is, if you are not promoting your offer, promoting your brand, then this is not going to work as well as it could. This works 100, 1,000 times more if you have a great brand that people want to work with, you're making content consistently that you can send to people in this process, and two, have a great offer that people would feel ridiculously stupid saying no to. That's all for this video, guys. Catch you in the next one. If you like this, if you got value from it, subscribe.